Hello, welcome to Faith, Fiction, and Folklore. And on this episode, I thought we would go ahead and continue with the Bible reading since we missed last week. I figured I would go ahead and take up the mantle myself and pick up where we left off. So last time we were on Genesis chapter 15 is where we stopped. So this week we are picking up with Genesis chapter 16. So without further ado, I will begin. So Genesis chapter 16. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said unto Abram, Behold now, the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife. And he went unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. That seems like the predictable outcome, but I think plenty of people have talked about that. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. And Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is thine hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Bir la Haroi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. And that is chapter 16. We're moving on to chapter 17. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me, and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. So this seems to be a separate covenant. I'm actually going to go back here and look at the covenant that took place after Melchizedek. So let's see. I think 14 is where Melchizedek appears. Yes, so it's 14, chapter 18. That's where Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought the bread. And then 15 should be the covenant. So let's look at the wording of what takes place in chapter 15 and then move it on and then jump back up to 17. Let's start at 4. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars if thou be able to number them. And he said unto them, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, Take me an heifer for 3 years. So let's look kind of closely what's happening here. So it looks like we've got several things happening. So at this point, it looks like this covenant is about his direct seed. So he's going to have a son, and that son will be the heir of a nation, or the father of a nation. And then he also refers back to the land, which that covenant was given in, I believe, chapter 12. Let's look back and check that. Yeah, so in chapter 12, we have this covenant here, where he says, Go to the place I will show you. Let's see. Okay. He starts out by saying, And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. So this is slightly different wording. I'm not entirely sure if it's talking about the children of Israel yet, or if he's just promising to make Abraham a great nation. That's what it looks like to me. Let me see if I can read ahead and see if there's any mention of Abraham's children in chapter 12. It doesn't look like there is. And perhaps I'm reading it wrong, and if I am, you can tell me in the comments. But it looks like, let's see, and Abraham took Sarai his wife and all his brothers and all their substance and gathered the souls. So he's leaving after he says, I will make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. I will make thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. So he's promising him, it looks like a country, and his name will be great. Yeah, make thee a great nation. Of course, great nation could also be a reference to seed as well. Quick update. So when I was looking at this again in editing, I realized that Genesis chapter 12, verse 7 actually has a reference to seed. The distinction is, though, and what I missed, is that the Lord actually appears to Abraham twice in chapter 12, and it's in verse 7 that he references seed again. So it's basically, chapter 7 says, And the Lord appeared unto Abraham and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him. So he promises the land first, and he promises the great nation first, initially in chapter 12. And then in 7, like after Abraham is left, he appears again and elaborates that unto thy seed will I give this land, and there builded he an altar unto the Lord. So what I think is happening is he promises the land first, and then he shows up again and elaborates that his seed, the generations after him, like the people after him, will inherit the land. Or let's look at that again, make sure. Yeah, he's going to give the land to his children. So Abraham apparently doesn't make the connection that these are going to be his children directly, because that's what he's asking about in 15. And so because initially he thinks that, he's like, how am I going to have seed? The steward of my house is Eliezer of Damascus, and that's in chapter 15. And so that's when Abraham clarifies, and they do this official act. And so it's like after the clarification, then Abraham believes God, and it's counted to him as righteousness. So it's Abraham, apparently, from what I can tell, Abraham wasn't clear that this was like literally his children until chapter 15. And then once God explained it to him, he believed him, and it was counted for him as righteousness. So that's what I think is going on. I just wanted to add that clarifier, because I did miss the reference to seed in chapter 7. Verse 7. And so I just wanted to add that clarification. All right, thanks a lot. Okay, and Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. So it looks like in chapter 15, the conversation is, you promised to make me a great nation, but I have no children. And then in 15, he clarifies that no, this will be your own child, will be the inheritor of this nation. And so, and then Abraham believed the Lord, and it was counted to him for righteousness, and that happens in chapter 15. Yeah, that happens in chapter 15. And then we move on to 17, and what's interesting is we shift from the father of a nation to, and as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. So he's not just the father of one nation, but his own nation, but many nations. So now we're seeing like a broadening of the covenant here, or a completely different covenant altogether. So you've got starting out promising the land and becoming a nation, then promising a race of people in chapter 15, and now he's going to be the father of many nations in chapter 17. So, okay. So let's start back up with verse 5. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. So, again, we're getting this tie to a covenant with the seed. So, let's see, between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant. Okay, so now we're getting the everlasting covenant with the Jewish people, looks like, in as well as this covenant for being the father of many nations, and there being an everlasting covenant between his direct seed. So moving on to chapter 8, and I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. So this is the covenant for the land to go directly to his seed. And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant, which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. And this is where we introduce the circumcision. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations, that he that is born in the house, or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with thy money, must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the circumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people, he hath broken my covenant. And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations, kings of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face, and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, that is 90 years old, bear? And Abraham said unto God, O that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. So, this is interesting. So, you've got a seed of Isaac, Abraham's seed through Sarah. That's a nation. And then Isaac is another nation. and Abraham is the father of many nations, and kings will come after him. So it looks like you've got three different covenants kind of happening at once here, by my reckoning. All right, on to 21. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the selfsame day as God had said unto him. And Abraham was 90 years old and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. In the selfsame day was Abraham circumcised, and Ishmael his son. And all the men of his house, born in the house, and bought with money of the stranger, were circumcised with him. And that is chapter 17. Moving on to chapter 18. And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, let's call it that. And he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground, and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on, and therefore are ye come to your servant. And he said, Do so as thou hast said. And they said, Do so as thou hast said. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah, and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. And Abram ran unto the herd, and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hastened to dress it. And he took butter and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, being old also? And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which I am old? Which am old? Let me read that again. And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. And the men rose up from thence, and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? So here we have a confirmation that the Lord is talking through these 3 men. Interesting. I wonder if that implies the Trinity, Cody, but maybe we'll talk about that Saturday. Anyway. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. And the Lord said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now, and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence, and went toward Sodom. But Abram stood yet before the Lord. So maybe not, because we've got the men seeming to be separate from the Lord. So at what point did the Lord enter? I guess he entered here. Interesting. So, was the Lord talking through the three men, or did he show up separately? I don't know. But you also have it up here, which I missed in chapter 13. And the Lord said unto Abram, wherefore did Sarah laugh? So unless he showed up separately while the men were eating, so perhaps it looks like you got one of three scenarios here. You've either got all three of them are the Lord, and maybe one stayed behind to talk with Abraham directly while the other two went. Maybe the three are angels and the Lord showed up separately. Yeah, I guess it would be two options. I think it's got to be one of those two. So either he showed up separately or he's one of the three men. Or perhaps he's all three of the men, and then when two of them left, like the Lord is still there because he's talking to one of them still. So one of those scenarios. But that's interesting because it clearly says the Lord is speaking, but it doesn't actually mention the Lord entering the scene. The only people that entered the scene is the three men. Interesting. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you have any. Let's see. So let's return where we were at. And Abraham drew near and said, Will thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place of the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked, that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And the Lord said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, Behold now, I have taken upon thee to speak unto the Lord, which I am but dust and ashes. Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for the lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 45, I will not destroy it. And he spake unto him yet again, and said, Peradventure there shall be 40 found there. And he said, I will not do it for 40's sake. And he said unto them, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure there shall 30 be found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30. And he said, Behold now, I have taken upon thee to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure there shall be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. And he said, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. And the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. And that is chapter 18. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Faith, Fiction, and Folklore. If you did, we would love it if you would subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Rumble. We can also be found on X, Instagram, and Facebook. And we are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Thank you again very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.